Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks very much for joining me on this version of Sourcing TV. I am absolutely delighted to be joined today, at long last, by GSA's Associate Director of Professional Development, Chris Halward. Chris, welcome. Thank you very much for joining.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for having me on.
So this has been a long time coming because we have been delivering professional development across the community for well over 15 years. And we've got an exciting launch announcement to talk about today. But to start off, Chris, could you talk a little bit about the GSA's approach to professional development and the portfolio of qualifications that we have been promoting for those last 15 years?
Yeah, okay. You know, I think it probably starts with us all those years ago recognizing that the strategic sourcing industry was really gaining a lot of momentum. There were people who saw that outsourcing was becoming a popular strategic choice for many organizations, and there were a number of people who saw themselves more and more as professional outsourcers, if you will. So we needed to try and capture what the skills were for those people specifically involved in outsourcing rather than in procurement, let's say. And so we built a model which has now become the global sourcing standard. That was based around having a life cycle. And that life cycle itself then spawned a number of training courses. And those training courses were touching on subjects such as governance, the make and buy decision between whether to outsource or not outsource. It was about looking at supplier selection. It was about contracts and commercial models that were appropriate, particularly for outsourcing situations. It was about the transition from where the service was to where it was going to be, or indeed back from where it was in a third party, back in-house. And also the absolute critical importance of managing the relationship over the course of an outsource relationship, which could be years, 5, 10, 15, even 30 years, as we know from the BBC arrangement that exists with Arkivu, who look after their masts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole piece on relationship management is so integral. You know, so we take very much a mutually aligned objectives, a win-win approach, and ensuring that it's not tribal, it's collaborative, not adversarial. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's been a key element of the global strategic sourcing standard and professional development we've delivered. But another part of it, I think, has been our approach to work-based learning. I know it's not a completely new approach, but I think it's an absolutely perfect approach for the sourcing industry. And I just wondered if you could actually expand a little bit upon what we mean by work-based learning and how students have benefited from that.
Yeah, work-based learning is not a new approach because it really taps into the basic way in which people learn. And people learn by doing things, typically. It's experiential learning. And work-based learning is a formalized way of capturing what people are learning day to day in the work that they do, capturing that, bottling that, so that people can anchor that learning much more efficiently. All too often, when we learn day to day in our jobs, we don't even notice that we are actually learning some new stuff. So if we stop and think about what happened, what does it mean, what can we do with that? It makes that learning process a very much more efficient and effective way of learning. It also, for us, it also meant that we could enable people to focus on those particular areas that were most relevant to the job that they were doing. So if they were, for example, focused in on governance, they could do some work-based learning around the work they were doing, designing a new governance structure for an IT arrangement they were just setting up. And they could turn that into into essentially a training module. So their workplace becomes their classroom. That's the basic idea.
Yeah, and the feedback that I've had from students has been one that's been incredibly helpful approach for them to actually understand a key strategic issue their company might be facing, but also the employers love it because the work that goes into it actually provides insight and potentially a full solution to that strategic issue. So it's a win-win for both the student and the employer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was about not sending people off on training courses. It was about saying, no, don't go off on the training course, just do your job and deliver something of value to the company, and then learn from that, and you get a qualification at the same time. Everybody's a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's even more a winner now all around the globe because we have actually changed or added a new approach to the professional development from the GSA. So I wonder if you can give us the headlines on that new approach, Chris, please. Yeah,
for years and years, of course, we were doing face-to-face workshop-based courses, and they were great. They were great from my point of view because I used to love meeting lots of professionals of all different levels from all different organisations, and we'd have a great time really just exploring all of the different topics, whether it's governance or transition or supplier selection or relationships, whatever it might be. The pandemic comes along, stops it all dead. So couldn't do it. So we thought, well, we can't just stop in the sense of stopping delivering any learning at all. So what we've done is we've bottled all of that, essentially. We've taken all of the core content and we've turned them into a series of videos. So those videos are 3/4 of an hour to an hour long. They are broken up into nice, convenient sections, so you can jump onto the web, you can have a look at the video, you can watch 15, 20 minutes of it, go off and do something else, come back and watch some more, and go through a series of subjects that are right at the very heart of people's understanding of how outsourcing actually works. And they've received some really great testimonials from some very experienced and senior people in the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said, they're relevant for all sorts of different individuals. Perhaps you could expand really on, who are our target students? Yeah,
I mean, the interesting thing I think about the programs that we've run is that they've attracted people who are relatively new to strategic sourcing, as well as people that have been doing it for quite a long time. Those people that are new, pretty obvious that they want to know some of the core knowledge. They want to understand what it is that they need to be doing in the job that they've just taken on. It's perhaps not quite so obvious for those people that have been doing it for quite a long time. But it was interesting because so often those people, when I asked them, they said, well, I've never had any training. I've been doing this for 5 years, never had any training in how to be a supplier relationship manager. I was just given the job. I was previously running a team of people. They outsourced. I was kept within the buy-side organisation and asked to look after the outsourced relationship with no training at all. So I've kind of made it up. And so what they're looking for is some validation. They're often doing a really good job, but what they want is somebody to say, actually, you are doing things right. And they kind of, phew, thank goodness for that. They will also pick up some things that they've never heard of before or learned before. And that will enhance the job that they're doing. So it's essentially people who are new to role, but also those people that are more experienced. It's also those people that don't see themselves as necessarily being a procurement or sourcing professional. They are people who are IT managers who don't have the support of a procurement department perhaps, and who need to want to take advantage of the opportunities of outsourcing. So this is a great way of just understanding the fundamental principles.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that it's not just the buyers, it's also the service providers that really need to understand how to best deliver in and govern the arrangements that they've actually got with their customers as well. So, you know, we're kind of unifying the industry with our professional development.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point, because I've run some programs where suppliers have come along and said, you know, this has been a really great way of us just getting a more balanced view of not only what things look like from the supply side, but also what it is, what the buyers are actually looking for. Interestingly, we always used to get quite a few people from the legal profession as well, who I remember they always used to say to me, you know, it's really interesting. We tend to only see the start of the program, the arrangement between a buyer and a supplier. And we sometimes get brought back in when things go wrong. But quite often we don't see how these arrangements really work for most of its time. And it's a great insight into the dynamics of those relationships. So even those people in that third sector, you know, not buyer or supplier, but really the advisory group in the middle, have found some value in the programs.
So Chris, if you could explain how we are differentiated from other professional bodies, such as SIPs, for example.
Now, the focus of the GSA has always been in the service sector rather than in the manufacturing sector. And organisations such as Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply would be focused on a much broader church. And indeed, I think the manufacturing sector would have been really the foundation of that particular institution. So what the GSA have been able to do is to focus in on that service sector and make their materials very much more relevant to service sector professionals. What I think it also means is that because we've got an approach that we use that's very much less academic in many ways, so it's not reliant upon people actually reading lots of textbooks as it would be if you're going through some other programs. And I think people whose learning style is not so comfortable with that feel as though they can get an awful lot more from it. Interestingly, a lot of the material that we do include in our courses is directly relevant to those courses that other organisations might be offering. So it could almost be seen as a kind of digest, a very focused digest of the material that one would need to learn if you were going to do other exams. So they really can sit side by side with other institutions' training and learning programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the difference is the work-based learning approach. So not quite so much focused on examinations in the classroom, and also that focus on, it's not just the procurement, it is the end-to-end life cycle, making sure that the strategy is still correct, and a big focus on managing the relationship through the lifetime of any given agreement.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, outsourcing is seen within the procurement cycle as a particular type of relationship, whereas I think what we've seen is that it is a particular area of activity, and there is a specific skill set that's required for outsourcing, which of course is now pretty much a kind of $1 trillion activity within the world. So it's not peripheral at all to procurement activities. It's a very, very popular, commonplace, strategic activity.
Yeah, absolutely right. And in addition to that, I think it's changing. And I think it's changing on a pin. So we're seeing different models, different gain share models, different alliance models. We're seeing, collectives coming to the fore, where you might buy once, but buy a portfolio of different service providers. So it's keeping on top of all of those changes as well, isn't it?
It is. It's hugely complex. There's no two ways about it. To be a successful and effective professional within the outsourcing and shared services world, we should probably say, because really to some extent those two activity areas are very much the two sides of the same coin. So to be effective in that particular area, there is a very extensive skill set that is still required and needs that focus and that specialist approach that I think we've always tried to provide. Yeah,
and absolutely, when most of these arrangements are worth millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions, you can quickly see how a good professional development program for the professionals working within this can reap dividends for the companies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we know a number of those programs that as you say, hundreds of millions or even billions.
Yeah, so if I was to summarize, we've now got the video on demand. We've got the content that can be digested anywhere around the world and can be converted into a gateway qualification. Then we've got our work-based learning approach, which can take professionals through either a certificate all the way through to a diploma. And the GSA's diplomas are supported by Portsmouth University and are accredited to be worth a third of a master's degree for anybody that wants to go on and convert that into a full master's.
Yeah.
But we're also launching a new masterclass, Chris. So just 2 sentences on that new masterclass.
Yeah, a new masterclass which just picks up on the importance of an ethical approach to sourcing. Over the last few years, it has become more and more important for those people involved in sourcing of services to be concerned about issues such as sustainability, the environmental impact of sourcing arrangements, the diversity issues and social issues that also are impacted by choices on and management of sourcing arrangements. So it'll be a program which really taps into all of those areas, builds people's understanding, and gives them some real focus on how they can deliver more ethically informed sourcing arrangements.
Absolutely, and how they can ensure that there is no social washing going on within their supply chain. So they can dig down properly and be very confident that everything's being done with sustainability at its heart. So I'm really looking forward to delivering that masterclass with you in the near future, Chris. So thank you very much for joining me today, and keep up all the great work that you are doing for GSA's professional development. Thank you.
Great, I enjoyed it. Thanks very much, Kerry.